All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host today, Josh Deming, joined by my colleague, Alex Noguez-Ruzic, and we are here today for a little post-game analysis from the game we just saw between the Canadian women's national team and New Zealand. Alex, there's a ton to talk about. We will get into the events leading up to the game. We will talk about what we just saw and, of course, what it maybe means leading into France, which will definitely be a big, big test. But first things first, Alex, I know it's a little early over there on the West Coast, but how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I mean, not too bad. I honestly, maybe normally I'd say eight's too early, but after the last World Cup was like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The last Olympics was like similar. 8 a.m. felt like I got to sleep in, almost getting up at 7 a.m., checking the lineups, everything. But no, nice to wake up and get a solid performance, a solid win. Bit of a nervy start, right? New Zealand goes down early. Canada gets the win, gets the Olympics off to a good start after certainly the last few days had been anything but good news for the Canadian team. All in all, you take this from this game.
Yeah, I feel like I honestly I don't know where to begin. If we talk about the drone incident, or we just kind of focus. I think let's focus on the game first, Alex, and then we will get into the things that led up to this. But if you guys are just joining us in the stream, say hello. Let us know what your guys' biggest takeaway was. Alex, I'm gonna go to both of our X's and bring up our. I'm assuming you did. You usually do, but we bring up our little takeaways. So I'll bring up mine first and kind of go over my points. And I want you to kind of dive into what I said, and then I'll do the same for you. And if you guys are in the chat, say hello. Let us know what you guys' thoughts on the match was as well. But these were kind of my takeaways. I thought it was a tough start. I was almost very close to putting out a tweet saying it's almost like this team was distracted by something, but they slowly built their way into the game a little bit, so I didn't end up doing it. I thought it was a poor start. I thought it was a poor goal to concede, but I did think we ended up growing into the game, responded well. I thought it was awesome that Carl basically went from being in that 19 to 22 alternate player roster spot into the team, into the starting 11. I wasn't sure she was going to start or if it was going to be Becky, but I thought Carl had a great ship. Rose and Fleming were great as well. And when Becky came on, I thought she could definitely probably be an option going forward who can maybe even start. It was interesting to see her go on the right side and moving Lawrence over to the left, but she could definitely push for a starting role. Leon had a very surprisingly quiet game. Usually she's someone we can count on. When you and I talked about it, the tournament beforehand, Alex, we said that she'd probably be the favorite to lead this team in goals because of the evidence that we've seen over the past few games. And I just thought she was, just wasn't really going. She was trying things. It just wasn't really going her way. This game is probably getting a little frustrated there. I thought the subs made a big impact. I know you're going to be happy with this, but Evelyn Vienne, what a finish. She had another big chance late in the game, probably from her standards would have liked to do a little bit better, but that's the type of player you want to have to come on in a moment like that and be able to put the ball in the back of the net. I don't think this was a very pretty result. I thought we dominated possession, thought we created chances, but all in all, it didn't seem like it came as easy as it maybe should have, but we got the job done. We got all 3 points. So, Alex, for my takeaways, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to take away from that. I think the start was frustrating for Canada because you knew already New Zealand was going to sit back. And I think for Canada, the fact they came out and were on the front foot for those first 12 minutes before the goal, and then to New Zealand to score was kind of like, ooh, that might be a bit tough in terms of breaking them down. And I think you could see like it was especially that 30-minute chunk in the first half, sorry, is something where um, that's where Canada could have. They just lacked fluidity. They lacked movement. I think Leon in particular was a big reason for that. She was just the ball was sticking to her too much, and then, funnily enough, it felt like with Prince, the ball wasn't sticking to her enough. It would come into her, and she was doing a good job of doing 1-2, but it wasn't really syncing up with her teammates. But then they obviously brought it together for the goal. I thought Carl brought a lot in terms of her overlaps. I thought that was good on the left, but then on the right, Lawrence wasn't bringing her overlap. She was kind of tucking in a lot. Then she kind of did overlap a bit on the first goal and then tucked in. That's what you want to see from her. Stretch the field, and then you can cut inside instead of just kind of drifting inside as she did. I thought the subs came in and really got the job done. And overall, I think it was a pretty efficient game from Canada. Ultimately, I don't think they were too threatened by New Zealand. I think it finished with 6 shots. The first goal, it was a tough one to concede off a set piece. I mean, it is kind of ironic that you have a week of spying controversy. What's the one thing you can take away from training? It's usually set pieces, dead balls. New Zealand, maybe there's something more Canada. It was obviously a lots to unpack from that one. I wasn't as frustrated with it in the sense that I thought, yeah, Canada could have closed it down better, but it was more of a zonal marking mistake than it was any individual problem. It was just like too slow to react, perfect shot. Both things happen on one play. That can happen, and yeah, I really like the comeback. I think the comeback, I had no idea what to expect. I think Claire Rousted said it on the broadcast. If Canada struggles against low blocks, they just let a team go up 1-0. Can they pull out some goals? And they did. And I think that's key.
And I think that's what frustrated me, at least right up the beginning of this game, is because of all the issues that were going off the field. I was a little bit nervous of how the focus was going to be, and I just looked. I mean, I'll have to watch the goal back a couple more times. It just looked like you said, zonal marking, but it was poor. I thought they reacted late, and it's probably just a goal you don't really want to concede. And I'm pretty sure, Alex, I don't know if you have the stats, but I believe New Zealand only had one corner. I know that was their first corner of the game that they scored off of, but I don't know if they had another one. So one corner for New Zealand, one goal. Maybe they had another one right off the top of my head. I can't 100% remember, but
I think I have the sofa score stat here. New Zealand had 2 corner kicks. They had
two
the
corners.
late one.
Oh,
It
right.
was like around 80th, 90th minute. I think they had one.
But so that was a little bit frustrating. But to your point, I thought they responded well, and it didn't really look once, especially when they got that one late in the game. It was kind of like, okay, now the second half is going to come. Hopefully they build on this. New Zealand was not threatening, and hopefully that they'll just be able to break down this low block. So if you guys are joining us in the chat today, get some comments in. We're going to dive into a few right now. I'm going to go over to Alex's takeaways on X. We have our first comment coming in here, says, wish they press a bit more after the second goal. New Zealand barely touched the ball when Canada was pressing the second half, had some chances, and then changed to the 4-4-2. Alex, do you think after the second goal you wish Canada would have pressed a little bit more? Or do you think that you didn't like that? I'm assuming this comment was referring to them kind of dropping off a little bit towards the end of the match.
I don't mind it because I think they were in a position where Canada typically is quite good in a low block. So it's not anything unusual. Plus, they had that allowed them to hit on the counter with Vian's late chance that, she should have and probably could have put away. Just went for power instead of maybe a bit of finesse, and ends up going right into Leet's hands on that late chance. So, no, I think it's something where, of course, you want to see Canada play aggressively, but you do have to remember they were pressing since about the 15th minute when they went down a goal. They used a lot of energy. They made their 4 subs pretty early, right? Because like Prince and Lacasse came off around 56, and then they made that other double sub around 65. I don't mind them just kind of sitting back and taking it, because I think against New Zealand, there was a lot of like, okay, New Zealand, now that you're chasing the game, can you break them down? And again, we didn't really see too much other than that kind of sloppy free kick Kadisha Buchanan gave up. But other than that, Canada did well to hold on. So I think given this opposition, given the state of the game, I wasn't too plussed by it.
All right, let's take a look at Alex's. Oh, I got a couple more comments. Big win, best player. Who's your player of the match, Alex? Who stood at the one player? Who stood out the most? Yeah, like I say.
I'd ultimately lean, I think, Jessie Fleming, just for what this game needed. She obviously got the beautiful assist on Eveline Vian's winner. She also had the hockey assists, technically, or no, not the hockey assist, it was the 4th assist on the first goal. She was involved very heavily because it was Lawrence to Prince to Lacasse, but it was kind of Fleming's movement that set it up. She was fantastic offensively, and I think this is what you want to see from her for Canada. It's just let her have the freedom to get involved, and I thought she did. She finished with 7 key passes in this game. She could have had more assists. She had that beautiful across to Quinn on the set piece in the second half. Fleming had a few other dangerous crosses that could have led to more. I just thought for a Canada team that was trying to break down a low block, Fleming was exactly what they needed in terms of her movement. She also made some great runs, right? Think of that first half where she had that cut back to Leon. She was just fluid. She was all over the place. That's what you want from Fleming. And that's the tough thing, is sometimes in this formation, it's hard to get that out of her. But, when she can get that freedom, it can be fun to watch.
All right, Alex, let's go through your takeaways here. I'm going to start from the bottom up because I see Fleming there. Fleming was great in the attack. I agree. Defense was solid. Need more width from the wing backs. Need quicker passing in the attack. Leon struggled with this. Becky, Awujo, Vian were lively subs. I agree. Great to see Lacasse, Vian score. Good comeback from Canada. Both goals were lovely. They were some pretty goals. Let's take a look at the front three then, Alex. Lacasse, and this is kind of what I want to where I want to go. Just looking maybe ahead to France, we'll build a predicted starting 11, but the front three was the front three we thought it was going to be: Lacasse, Leon, and Prince. It was Carl that found her way into the starting 11, and I think there were some big question marks around who was going to start at the left wing back position. Becky came on. I thought she was very effective as well. So what would you like to maybe see going forward in the next match? Would you want to see Carl get to start again? Would you want to see maybe Becky go into that role? Are you fine with the front three going forward against France with the Lacasse, Leon, and Prince? And obviously, I mean, Evelyn Vian comes on, makes a big impact as well. What would you like to see going forward out of those few positions?
It's tough. I'd start with the wingbacks. That's why I think the biggest question could be, just in the sense I thought Carl brought just simplicity, solid runs, got into good areas, was really good at left wing back, and you can see the benefit having a true left footer has. I think that's why Priestman was so eager to get Sydney Collins in, because she really likes that comfort that she brings. So you have to feel Carl can get a look after a performance like this, but that's tough, because what that could mean is that I thought Janine Becky was also fantastic at wing back off the bench. And I thought Ashley Lawrence, this was one of her quieter games. At the same time, it's hard to think about benching a Lawrence because she brings you so much value defensively. And even if she is quiet, she can still produce moments like on that first goal where she was the orchestrator of that play of go wide, get the ball, play Fleming, receive the ball, pass to Prince, goal. Like Lawrence can give that to you, but I thought she was quiet. She wasn't getting forward as much. Her service was off. But what I think is that, yeah, I think the front three might need a bit of a jolt. The thing is, this is the tough situation that Canada kind of faces in the front three, is that Adriana Leon in this game really lacked fluidity. Like she did. I think in this front three, in this game particularly, from your front three, you need 1, 2, 3 touches. You need to be quick. And I thought Nichelle Prince did an excellent job of this. Every time the ball went to her, it was pass, turn, go forward. Chloe Lacasse, similarly, although there's a few times where the ball stuck a bit too long. Adriana Leon, it felt like every time she got the ball, it slowed down. Just for context, I checked. There's not a way to see who had the most in the game, but Adriana Leon was dispossessed 25 times on SofaScore. For a forward, for an attacker, like some forwards, you're lucky to get 40 touches in a game, right? 30, 40. Yeah. So to get dispossessed 25 times, it was just too slow. And I think it was a tough question, because I think Leon probably should have been subbed off, but it's a tough decision to make, because ultimately, as they said on the broadcast, 9 goals in 9 games this year. She's the player who you want the ball to fall to in the attack. You want her to be around, especially as Canada's chasing the game. But the reality is their attack was more fluid when the ball was going through a Prince, a Lacasse, when Vian came on, Hoytema. So I think there's a tough question to be had with the Leon, is that I think you start Prince, because what I like with Prince, you can get, even if she only has 16 her legs as she comes off the injury, she brings that hold up play. She brings a threat. The question is, what do you do around her? And I think a Becky could earn a start on the right. You keep Lacasse, but do you really bench a Leon given her form, given what she's done? I think you probably stick with her in the next game and see if this game was just a bit of an off day, or maybe she's just not going to be in form in this tournament. But I think that's the biggest debate. And at the same time, the one thing is, for whatever reason, Evelyn Vian keeps doing her best work for Canada off the bench. So as much as I'd like to see her as the starter, I do like this. Prince starts, holds up play, tires out defenders, bring Vian on, because they're two different profiles. So for what it's worth, I think Vian, despite her goal, I keep her in a super sub role. I think the bigger question is Becky versus Leon.
I think they're being incredibly harsh, though, don't you think, to bench Leon, because she's been so good for us.
It's tough to leave Becky on the bench too, so it's harsh either way.
So then, that's where I guess the biggest question mark I thought would have been Carl, because I mean she didn't make the original 18 player squad. There was an injury. She comes on, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's going to start. Obviously, she's a more traditional left wing back instead of Becky, so I guess maybe that's the reason why. And I thought Carl had a great match. It's definitely a debate.
I'd say what I think we'll see, if I'm going to predict, is we're going to see Becky at left wing back. We're going to see Lawrence at right wing back, and I think we're going to see the same front three. But that's where I'd say, personally, I think you should keep Carlin. But I think to answer, just if we're going to go like what would Bev Priestman do, I think it's going to be Becky Lawrence with Leon sticking in.
Yeah. Gonna go through. Sorry, Alex. I'm just gonna go through a couple comments here. All right. We need to improve drastically to defeat France. I wish that we shouldn't be too hard on our players. I don't think we're being too hard on our players. I think if we're looking at a performance where we would be just a little disappointed, it would probably only really be Adriana Leon. Do you not think? And that's just because of her high standards. I mean, she's been our best player by far this past year, and in this match, she was probably our worst player. But I don't really look at anyone else on that team that had a questionable night.
Well, I think also the reality is this is the defending Olympic champions. This is a tournament they've thrived in. This is probably their easiest match on paper, quote unquote. Like, this is a game where you want to see kind of Canada show some confidence, show some dominance. And yeah, I think for the most part, honestly, yeah, there wasn't too many negatives. And like you mentioned, Leon, again, it's just like statistically the 25 dispossessions statistically by the eye test, she wasn't at her usual standard, and that's obviously something that she's been scoring goals all year, and Canada's been thriving off of it for a tournament like this where you need goals. You hope that Leon finds her form for the next game, because yeah, against a France, you're gonna need a moment of magic like that to beat a team of that quality.
All right, so we have a comment here that says disagree completely. Leon has much better finish than Prince. She was dispossessed a lot because she goes for the kill every time. Yeah, I don't know. No, just by her standards, no. She just didn't have a very good match today. The getting dispossessed a lot was one thing, but she just looked like Alex mentioned the good moments of this game and how fluid Canada at times looked, and Adriana Leon was a big reason why we didn't at times. She just looked a little bit off the pace, and that's fine. I would give her another go, just given her form, and maybe if she can't do it to her standards again against France, maybe you look at it. But she is a player that over the past year, she's been my favorite player to watch with this national team, because she's just done a little bit of everything, whether it's, it's over set pieces, corners, whether it's just being able to get a big goal at a big moment, stepping up, taking penalties, usually, stretching the back line, linking up, and she's a little bit of everything, to be honest. And this game just didn't look really anything like her. So I mean, I hold her to a bit of a higher standard than what I saw today, but that's fine. We got the result, and if one of your best players isn't able to be at her best, it's great when players around you step up, and that's exactly what we saw. A couple goals today. Lacasse getting one in her Olympic debut, which was very cool, and then Evelyn Vian coming off the bench with a finish like that. That's what you need to see. Players coming up with big moments when maybe one of your stars isn't at her exact best. I love the possession.
One thing to that point too with Leon is just like, you don't want to see her forcing the play. That's what I felt like she did too much. I think the biggest example of that was I don't know if you remember, there was a chance in the first half where she beat her player with a great nutmeg, comes into the box.
Yeah.
3 players are open. She goes for the shot. Like, again, that's just forcing it. I like you mentioned, that's part of what Leon does well. She goes for the kill, so to speak. She likes to go for goal. But I think sometimes you can't force it. I think that's something she's done well for Villa this year. She had a handful of assists. She does well to pick out her teammates as much as she likes to go for goal and be that kind of killer. But I don't know if it was perhaps with this in Canada, because for Villa, she, her defined role is, okay, yeah, you can be, it's kind of more of a dual threat of score, but also create. And I wonder, just for Canada, maybe in her head, she's kind of thinking like, oh, I've been the key source of offense. Let me be that key source of offense, which I get. Like, she's been quite good at it. But I think also for Canada to work, especially, I just think of Leon, Prince, Lacasse. For my money, they were Canada's best front three at the end of last year. What worked is they played off each other so well. And like you saw it on the first goal, they have good movement. They're fluid. What I like is that Prince can pop up on the left. She can pop up on the right. Leon can pop up on the left. She can pop up front. Lacasse can pop up all over. They're fluid, and I just felt like Leon kind of took a bit too much responsibility of, oh, let me be the person who needs to score, when in this front three specifically, fluidity is what's needed. Or maybe if in a different scenario where Leon's leading the line and she has 2 creators under her, then I'd get a bit more. I'd understand a bit more if she was playing a bit more direct. So I think it was more as much her style of play not fitting as much into this setup in this game, if this makes sense.
Yep, and I think that's, I mean, looking on X, that's what a lot of people felt. We got a comment here saying I felt Leon was overdoing it, and I mean it's similar criticism as we've sometimes given to Davies on the men's side. It's a player who, I mean, it is at times your best player, and they want to be able to take on the opposition. They want to be able to, make their mark on the game, and sometimes it works. And we've seen it plenty of times in the past, especially this last year with Adriana Leon. She's just been so incredible, and today wasn't really one of it. And I think that's kind of like that's okay. At times, that's okay. We're hoping that she'll be able to come back and kind of maybe take a step back and do what she does best. But this game just wasn't for her. That's fine. But we'll move on for here because I do want to focus on another player. These two questions kind of tie in. The second half of this question was best player according to me was Fleming, and then we go over to GM saying I loved all the possession. Glad Canada were able to get a result. I want to focus on Jessie Fleming because I do think she was very good today. That ball was fantastic for the assist, but just kind of being able to dictate the play, exactly what she wants to do in the midfield. I thought she was great, but I had a question for you, Alex, because we mentioned at times when Canada could struggle to break down low blocks, having someone like Awujo come into the game for Quinn, I thought, like from right from the beginning, I thought that might have been an option. I know you and I talked about it, and we assumed that was going to be the Quinn and Fleming partnership. But in a game like this, I felt like Awujo would have been pretty useful. But regardless, even without her, we dominated possession. So what did you make of the midfield, and what did you like of the relationship between Quinn and Fleming in this game?
Yeah, I think the big thing was, like I mentioned earlier, Fleming had freedom, and I think that's when you get the best out of Fleming. Like that's where it's fascinating to watch her is that she'll make the bursting recovery run to make a tackle, but then she's also willing to make a run into the box. She's willing to get on the ball and just have that freedom. I think that was really important. I think Quinn did an important job in freeing Fleming up for that. So I think that was key. And I think in this midfield, the important role, especially in a low block, is you need those deep runs that Fleming provided, but you also need those switches that Quinn kept providing, where they got the ball, head up, switch. That's what you need, right? If you're trying to break down a low block, you need to stretch them wide. You need to force them to step out and open those spaces in the middle. I thought Quinn did an important job of that in the first half. But also, what I like when Awujo comes in is Awujo is a bit more of a direct threat in the sense that she's more comfortable pushing up as well as an 8, whereas Quinn would kind of hold back as a 6, which I think, again, it's going to be contextual because I think what Canada realized is that New Zealand weren't offering much of a counter threat, that they didn't need Quinn to sit in front of 3 already, center backs, right? Like just between rows, Gilles and Buchanan on their own. They were doing enough to just clean up all the counters. Okay, you have the freedom to go in Awujo. You go kind of more 2-8 attacking, and I think that's a good option. I think really what will depend now is the next 2 games, because one thing that stands out is that France has good speed. Like if they got a Delphine Cascarino, if they can get her involved, a Deani as well, they can hit in transition. So I wonder if you might want to start a game with a more of a Quinn-like presence to counter that. Ditto with Colombia, they obviously got Linda Caicedo, which is going to be a tough threat to deal with. But I think in this New Zealand game, it made sense to go to Awujo when they did, and I think it's something where she could potentially have continued value to play in that sort of role. And who knows, maybe could see her get a start. If I'm looking at those 2 games, I could really see Colombia as a game where you get a bit of a start, because at least for what it's worth, with Caicedo's threat, it's going to be out wide. That's going to be her versus Jade Rose. That's going to be must-watch TV, like incredible battle of 2 young talents. Hopefully that could free up Awujo to just hold it down the middle and give a bit more in terms of just direct line breaking press, where it's Quinn, it's more of the careful, calculated passing, and there's definitely value to both.
Absolutely. Got a couple more comments coming in. We're going to get to the drone conversation soon. I saw someone, I was just going through the comments up there. Someone asked about it. We will get to it. Probably a little bit later in the stream, we'll talk about the off-field issues, but we need someone like Vian in the men's team. Good movement, similar to Tanny, but better finishing. Even the skill to turn the defender was amazing, but unfortunately, the shot went straight at the keeper. Yeah, that was a nice chop. That second goal would have been icing on the cake for her to come in and have a cool finish the way that she did. And then, I mean, that goal would have reminded me, Alex, of Theo Baer's goal this past year. Remember when he did the old chop? She went for the scoop out of her second. As soon as she did, I'm like, oh, she goes for the scoop. That's gonna mimic exactly what Baer did. But tough finish. You definitely will want that one back. But do you think there's a chance that we could see her? Probably not against France, like we mentioned. But do you think there's a chance maybe against Colombia we could see an Evelyn Vian, especially maybe she comes off the bench and impacts the game against France? or
I
to
think
start?
that's obviously a possibility. I think if you see it, it's maybe in that third game, just kind of like depending on how things go, give it as like a prove it opportunity. Again, for whatever reason, her starts haven't worked out. I don't think that's on her. For whatever reason, Canada just always seems to start slow, and their subs end up being a huge part of what makes their game plan click. But yeah, she just has that in her, like that chop. She did it against in the or not in the Italian Cup final. I think this year was against Fiorentina. I want to say she did a very similar chop. Like she has that in her arsenal where she's good with both feet. She's tough to defend. She just brings a constant threat. And what I do like is that she's a kind of annoying player off the bench to deal with because you think about it, what she's going to do, she's going to constantly run in behind. You saw it like every opportunity, she's going to run in behind. And she doesn't get the ball. All right, no complaints. Just head back, go back to the line and run in behind. And it's tough for defenders because either Canada finds her like you did and you're constantly like, oh, wow, how's she keep getting behind? Or even if you don't, you're constantly like checking, right? Like, wait, what's going on? Like, why is this player constantly making that movement? And it's a different threat to deal with. And I think that's one of Vienna's best skills is just how consistent she is with her movement in behind. She's always been her best in behind. So I think for Canada, that's something to consider is that in the game, because with Prince right now, what you're getting is you want a bit more hold up from her. You want her to be a bit more of a target. While Vienna also can offer you something a bit more direct in behind, which in some games, I wonder against France, for example, they're likely to play a high line. Someone like Vienna could be very useful off the bench if Prince is struggling to get in the game. They're struggling to get in behind that high line of the French. I think Vienna could really offer some value. And same goes against Colombia. I feel like a KG physical game like that, you're going to want a Vienna on the field.
I agree. I agree. But all right, I think it's time. We're about 30 minutes in. We will get into some of the drone conversation. So if you guys have any questions about it, I've been avoiding them for now, but they're starting to pile up. So I'll go through them. If you have any questions about anything to do with issues off the field, feel free to put them in. But let's get this started. So talk about the drone, and we'll go with this comment to kind of kick things off. On another topic, Alex, you mentioned on another pod that Herdman has been accused of droning years ago. Tell us more about their CONCACAFing. So, Alex, where do you want to begin with the drone? To summarize, 2 incidences happened. 2 staff members were sent home. Bev stepped away from this game. I kind of want to start there. What do you think the big reason why Bev stepped away from the game when she didn't have to? Do you think it?
I mean, I think it's accountability, right? Like ultimately, whether or not she, is involved with it, will we ever know? Maybe who knows, right? Whether or not how much of this is linked to her, we don't know. But ultimately, it's her staff, right? She's accountable for what her staff does, rogue or not. So I think it was probably something along the lines of just like, ultimately the leader has to take some responsibility for the actions of those around them. And yeah, because I think it was definitely, this has been a tough look for Canada. I think it's something what's been the toughest thing about all this is that it's the Olympics, right? It's in terms of sporting events, it's one of the pinnacles of sports, but not just that, it's one of the pinnacles of sportsmanship, fair play, collaboration, right? And spying on other teams kind of goes against that. So that was a big one. And yeah, I think for Canada, I think it's just it was an embarrassing situation, and ultimately Priestman has to take responsibility for it. And yeah, I think this was definitely a huge learning lesson for Canada, and one I'm very curious to see what happens in the aftermath. What this investigation will yield. What will it mean going forward? Because obviously it could have much bigger implications, even just beyond this tournament.
It's just there's been a lot of scandals. There's been a lot of issues. I put a tweet out about it. Others did as well. It just feels like every time something good happens on the men's or women's side, it's a step forward followed by a step or two backwards. There's always something. It's like we can't help ourselves at times. But why do you think one game? And because there's a question here, who will be the coach next game? Do you think Bev was just? And I mean, I guess I can answer. I mean, I just feel like it would be. I know it's accountability, but there wasn't really a reason for her to step away besides saying, hey, this was maybe on me. I'm gonna take a step back, but then do you take a step back for the next game? In the following game, do you not come back at all? I I don't really know. I don't really know what it means. Do you think that she will be back for the France game?
I think so. I think it's
Yeah.
something where ultimately until that investigation, because I think both Canada Soccer and FIFA, we're all looking into this. I think ultimately this is something that we'll see the results of after the tournament. So I think I'd expect Beth Priestman back on the bench, to be honest, in terms of it, because yeah, I think it's something where, in terms of punishment, I don't think it was ever going to be a situation where Canada was going to have to forfeit a game where points were going to be on the line. That just feels incredibly harsh, because while it is cheating, it's important to put the cheating in context of, they're spying on the other team's training. Ultimately, football is a fluid game. Most of the stuff you would learn in trainings, formations, where players are going to play, you're going to know that anyways.
Yeah.
Of course, you could gain some key advantages on set pieces, on potentially if they plan on playing a certain player out of position to surprise Canada, etc. And I think, of course, that's a huge advantage. But ultimately, you're not gaining the sort of advantages that makes like a huge difference, right? Like, it's not like you're doping in a 100-meter race where you're getting clear and obvious advantages. And that's why I think where for Canada, I think the punishment of two of the staffing members getting sent home, Priestman missing one game, I still wouldn't be surprised to see financial implications on top of this. I think there would have to be, right? Like, of just setting a message. Of course, you can argue that, fines don't deter this kind of behavior, but ultimately, for a federation like Canada, it certainly would hurt them a lot
Yeah.
more than it might hurt others. So, no, I think those are all things to keep an eye on. I think it's something where ultimately it's going to depend on perspective. Some might find this is too soft, some might find this is too harsh, right? Like, ultimately, I think the reality lies in between, and it is one of those situations for Canada, where there's so much to unpack from it.
It's just one of those situations where I can't believe what I'm watching. If we really just look at the entire picture, there's already been issues with this program on both sides. We know that. Going into the World Cup, there was issues. Now we get to go into the Olympics, which is such a bright moment for the women over the years. Bronze, gold. We love that. We want to see this. We want to go into this with hope. We just watched the Copa America performance from the men. We're already excited. We want to see another medal appearance, and then to make the decision to cheat in a way and put your drone and take a look at something that you already mentioned, Alex, that you can see by just watching film on New Zealand. And then on top of that, you're the heavy favorites already. You shouldn't need to put a drone over New Zealand to defeat them. It was just a stupid decision. It put a bunch of unwanted attention on this team, on this program that doesn't need to be there. And honestly, it pissed a lot of people off. The fans, once again, like myself, I thought it was a really poor decision. I thought it rubbed me the wrong way leading into this tournament, and I felt bad for the players more than anything. So it was great to see them go out there, put it all aside. They struggled. They dug deep. They found a way. They won. They took all 3 matches, and I'm hoping they can go forward, because it's just like we shoot ourselves in the foot. That's the only way I can describe it. It was just needless and it was senseless.
Well, I think also another big thing before we bring in Armin as well, just because I think he'll have some interesting things to say on the whole situation. What really stood out to me is just like the lack of awareness slash like context of the whole situation. Because just to the earlier question, because it was mentioned that the John Herdman thing, right? How in 2021 the Canadian men's national team were playing set to play Honduras. Honduras showed up to Toronto a few days earlier. They're training in like Oakville. Drones spotted over their training. John Herdman's asked. He gives a very committed like half denial, like a lot of people fly drones. You know what? That's something where it's CONCACAF, right? Like, we're used to CONCACAF in the sense where people do a lot to gain advantages. People will spy on training. People will, dive to get the extra foul. People are going to throw bags of piss from the crowd to rattle teammates. Like, CONCACAF, it's something where I think it's something where Canada, again, within context, for so long they've heard like, oh, in CONCACAF they're too nice. They've got to answer some of the shenanigans, and they've started to over the last few years, and that's worked within CONCACAF. But what they have to remember is that CONCACAF, a lot of what goes on is just like, for some reason, there's no reason for them to be betraying the sporting integrity like it is, and we just accept it for some reason. They're like, oh, it's CONCACAF, like it's okay to cheat, it's okay to do all this. For Canada, again, it was just surprising for them to take that context. If you're going to the Olympics, you're going to a spot of fair play, you're going to an international tournament. Heck, you're going to a spot even just like politically. France and drones are not a good mix either. Like, this is not the country to be using drones, because politically it's a huge problem and a huge debate. Like, there's just a whole lack of context of it that really made no sense from this Canadian team, and that's something that hurts, because now it's put them in a situation where, yeah, that out of context, a lot of people will see this and be like, oh, it's same old Canadian Federation, when you and I know the last 6 months have been really positive for them, with Kevin Blue coming in and really freshening things up, the Copa America run. And that's also the biggest frustration, is that this just whole incident just seems like a poor moment of judgment and context from Canada.
Absolutely. Armin's dying to come in. So Armin, pop on. I'm assuming you want to talk about this drone issue. Is that what you're waiting to chime in for? You are muted.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you guys are droning on and on and on about this drone situation. So I felt like I had a few things I wanted to touch base on. First off, I think it's important to put into context what actually happened here relative to, I think, maybe some of the media hoopla that was made around it. So there was reports that, staffers were arrested, and that the consequences that were being doled out had actually nothing to do with the Olympic side of things. They violated a French law of flying a drone without a permit. So far, the only real consequence we've actually seen from any of this is the legal side. We haven't seen anything formally from Canada Soccer except for a statement that says that they're launching an internal investigation and that they're going to be processing sort of everything that happened. So I don't think we've seen the concept or the full consequence of what this is yet. I think it's probably likely that after the Olympics, there will be even more decisions made regarding people's jobs, regarding, like the results of that investigation and what actually happened. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I first heard something about a drone being flown over New Zealand training, I mean, I don't know, maybe I tried to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I thought like maybe they were filming something for the documentary, like they were trying to get B-roll or something. I'm like, surely there's no way, right, that these guys are going to be filming New Zealand training, especially with the context of like, we've played New Zealand 11 times in the past, 12 times now, which means that we've beaten them 10 times and drawn twice. This is not a team that we need a particular advantage over. I mean, like, past history dictates that like we have a very clear advantage in terms of player quality. So just the fact that like we would even resort to this is so bizarre. So bizarre. I mean, put it this way, like if it happened before the France game, you'd be like, okay, well, Bev Priestman's like, or allegedly Bev Priestman and the staff are, digging into every avenue they can to get an advantage against like a very strong opponent. But like New Zealand, really? And like as an Olympic opener, like you're not even in a desperate position yet. You're not even in a position where you have like, we need to get 3 points in our next game or we're done. Like you still have the entire tournament ahead of you. So I don't know. I just thought it was really odd. And I don't think we've seen the full extent of it, but the other side of this is, and I mean, I'd like to maybe talk about this, is like Bev Priestman surely must have known that this was happening, right? Like there's an element of like, what, how could a rogue assistant be flying a drone without Bev Priestman's knowledge, right?
I feel like because Bev this is just my opinion, because she stepped away from this match tells me that she in one way knew about it. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like her stepping away almost is like, I played some part in this, or I should have done better, or I made a mistake. But everything you said, I mean, I agree, Armin. I would echo it, that it was dumb timing. It made no sense right before the tournament, one that we've done so well in. It's flabbergasting. I don't really know how else to say it. It's just like I said, every time something's going well, it's just something in the back of our minds. Like, let's make this difficult on ourselves. Let's make it difficult on the players, on the fans. And that's just something that we do over and over. And I don't know how to explain this situation. And I just wish more common sense would have prevailed. And I agree. I thought the first thing that would have said is like, we have a documentary that we're doing. We are so sorry. Like, like this was so naive of us. We didn't mean to do this. It's an accident. We have, but no, that's not what they. I don't know.
Well,
It's just
that's
ridiculous.
that's again where the biggest thing I'm curious to see in this investigation is that I don't know if you guys read the statement from like the Bordeaux police or something, was that they like detained the individual, they searched his hotel and found like analysis of the drone, like they like because he went a few days earlier, didn't get caught, had written out a full like analysis report. My question was like, was that report going to be used in a pregame meeting? Was that's where I think the biggest thing that's going to come out to the investigation is that the fact they searched him, and like it seems pretty clear that it was spying on with the intention of informing the report. That's where I'm curious. Like, was this guy just like overeager in the sense that like, oh, I want the best report possible and I'm literally gonna get firsthand information that no one knows, or was this something that was coordinated by the entire Canadian team of let's get some inside intel? And I think that's going to be the most telling thing of this investigation, because the fact that they caught or they searched his hotel room and found that information for me was the biggest part.
This is what I like from Neil. I agree. Like, it seems idiotic to spy in New Zealand, a team we've dominated, and the risk of drones in France. There's nothing special about their approach today. There's no real reason to spy on this team. What's the risk reward here? A team that we should beat, or try to sneak peek at something that we couldn't learn from watching them play? Like, what is the reasoning for being so? I don't know. Like I said, I'm a lost words.
I don't know if this has anything to do with anything. Like, I know like people in Canada, for example, that fly drones, it's like really hard to get a permit to do so. So even if you're like just recreationally, you're like, oh, I just want to film something cool on a GoPro or like on a drone or whatever. Like, just getting that permit is a pain. So even if you're like a content creator, like getting those B-roll shots, you really have to go through layers of approval. And in France, with the context of what's going on there politically, like, it is definitely not easier than here. So, I mean, even just taking the risk of flying a drone at all, like if you were going to spy, there are other ways to spy, and like, or other ways to glean that sort of information. Like, why even take that risk? Like, it seems like such a, like, I don't want to be vulgar, but it seems like such a dumb thing to do. I don't know. Like,
well, that's another thing too, is that how easily this person is caught and traced back to the Canadian team, where it's like an analyst on the team as well. That was just like, again, it seems very sloppy as well.
Yeah, which also makes me wonder, like, how frequently does this happen in football? You know, I mean, there was reports that it happened against Honduras. I know we kind of went over that, but is this something that, like, we've been doing for a while? That's the other thing. It kind of, like, you don't want to think about things like this because it makes you feel kind of icky about the whole situation. But at the same time, you do have to sort of question, like, how long have we been doing this? And, how many times were we not caught? And how many other teams are doing this? Is this just a commonplace thing and that we just got unlucky? Like, I don't know. I can't really make heads or tails of it. But I remember I was watching Gareth yesterday on, I think he was on CB24, and he was saying, like, this should end with Bev Priestman, like, resigning or being fired. And it's hard not to kind of put your mind in that place either, because it's like, well, if you knew about it and you authorized it, then, I mean, yeah, you've put a stain on the team's efforts. You've also done something that's illegal, or you've sanctioned something that's illegal. And if you don't know, then you're not in control of your staff anyways. So, yeah, I mean, not to drone on and on and on about this, but I think, I mean, I don't think we've seen the last of it. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We'll get a couple questions in here as well. Nathan comes in and says, maybe it's just a case of a scout who is terrible at his job and wants to cheat his or her way up the ladder.
Actually, I did hear something about this on Footy Prime. They put up a YouTube video, and they said that the guy who was flying the drone apparently used to, like, live with John Herdman as well. So I don't know. Is that anything?
Like, well, Alex, there's a comment in here about you talking about Herdman had access to droning years ago. Is there anything you want to elaborate on that, or?
Well, that was the Honduras incident where Canada, again, his kind of vague non-denial. I mean, he didn't say anything, but the fact that he was just like, instead of being like, oh, that was in no way associated to Canada Soccer, which he easily could have done. But the fact that he responded with, there's a lot of people that fly drones in Canada, kind of implying that he knew one of those people. But again, I think it's a huge CONCACAF thing, because it's like, there's a reason why during qualifiers over the years, Canada has tried to limit the amount of training time they do in opposing countries. They do a lot of tactics, such as they'll keep locations private till the last minute, and it's tough for media because like you're only allowed 15 minutes of this session. And like I remember, yeah, one year when I went to Costa Rica just for a game back in 22, it was like chaos of like they're supposed to train and then they canceled their training session and did a walkthrough of the stadium when they were supposed to train, and then they actually trained later without telling anyone. Like they do stuff like that all the time, and like there have been instances. It's really prevalent, I think, among CONCACAF teams. Like I know, for example, like another one way back in 22 as well, that Canada was training in Canada, and they caught some people spying on them on one of their training sessions. They just kicked the people out and like didn't make much of a deal of it. So it's just something where I think it happens so much within CONCACAF, because again, there's every advantage trying to be gained and there's just nothing done to stop it. That's why, again, where I'm not surprised, because I think it's a lot more prevalent than we think outside of a jurisdiction. Like obviously here, and rightfully so, there is the IOC layer, there is the COC layer, there is the FIFA layer, where these people are taking it very seriously to run a fair event, whereas in places like CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, as we've seen, just for them, it's kind of like, as long as no one's, doing anything like horrifically unethical, we kind of turn a blind eye to it. And I think that's kind of led to this culture of complacency that obviously can lead to dumb incidents like this.
That's fair. Let's bring up a couple more. Bev needs to. I wasn't sure if someone was going to ask it, but they did. It's Robert. Bev needs to resign. Whether she knew or didn't know, it's irrelevant. If she knew, then you have to question her intelligence for all the reasons you guys have discussed. If she didn't know, then wow. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about it. I'll just ask you a very simple question. Do you think she will resign, or do you think she will get sacked, or do you think that she will stay on? Because it's crazy that this is happening to me at the Olympics, a competition where she brought home the gold medal. One of the most incredible, important moments in Canadian soccer, and I can picture that day clear as day. I'm sure many Canadian soccer fans did. That is, she will go down with a legacy because of it. And I never would have thought that. I thought maybe her time would come eventually, but not this way. And I think from what I've seen on social media, fans are not happy. So you guys, you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable, or one of you guys can start. But do you think she should walk away? Do you think she will, or do you think she'll stay on?
Well, I think she was already kind of in an interesting position, because she recently signed a new contract with Canada Soccer on the back of I would say a failed World Cup. And this was a contract that was offered to her before Kevin Blue and before Jesse Marsh and before Peter Grusso, before all these new sort of faces came into the organization. So the people who made the decision to give her this new contract might not even be the same people who were here. So I would say this definitely doesn't help the case from the Canada Soccer side, if they were even considering a new coach. But again, like, it is also a results-based business. Like, if Canada shrugs this off, because there's a part of me that also can sympathize with, like, look, everyone does this, so we just got caught and let's just move on. Maybe that's the attitude, and certainly Canada will remain like focused more on winning the gold or medaling again. So if Bev, takes this team to a gold medal podium finish and then says, I'm very sorry, and this happened under my watch, and I mean, maybe she stays on. But I also think that, like, Canadian, it's tough, because there are teams that revel in the dark arts. They like the reputation of, being like bending the rules and doing whatever it takes to win. And so that level of like notoriety is emboldens their reputation on the international stage. But I think Canadians generally always try to root for the good and for, the fair. And that's a huge part of this, is like, even if Canada does well at this Olympics, is this something that is going to best, represent the values of Canada? And it's also one of those situations where, even by owning it, the right thing to do might be to step away. So it's tough. I can see both realities. I can see a situation where she stays. I can also see a situation where she resigns. But I also see that, like, you know, it also depends. Like, what does FIFA do? How serious is FIFA's punishment? And, you know, what does this impact? Like, we still don't know if, I mean, maybe I could be wrong, Alex, but we still don't know. Like, is it possible that these 3 points will be wiped? Like, has that decision come down, or?
I mean, it hasn't, but I think it's highly unlikely just because, like, there isn't precedent for something like this. But
yeah, that'd be harsh. That would be harsh.
So it's just so many unknowns, so many like variables still up in the air. And then the other side of it is just like Nathan over here says in the comments, it allows Kevin Blue an opportunity to find like a coach that's his coach. You know, like when you're inheriting a program, there's parts of it where you like and parts of it that you want to make changes, and then there are parts of it where, you know, you want to take a look. Like we just saw it with York United, right? Like York United could have, like, they have new ownership. They could have come in and said, you know, we just want to start fresh this season with our new head coach, and you know, thank you for your services, Martin Nash, but we're not interested. But then there's also the other option, which is like, we'll give you a run, and if you impress, then maybe we'll keep you on board. But if you don't, or something happens, then, you know, it's a new regime, and you know, it's time to transition over to a new kind of coach as well. I don't know. It's a really unfortunate situation. I think at the very baseline level, the person flying the drone will, I'm assuming, not be part of the staff anymore. And I don't know, like, it depends. It depends. And if they were acting on their own, then, I mean, there's nothing you can really do. But if they were instructed by Bev Priestman, then you also kind of feel bad for, like, not to call them scapegoats or anything, but, you know, it's a tricky situation.
It is.
Does that cover it? I feel like pretty much.
Yeah, I think to add to your point, though, I think it might be in a situation where no matter what they do at the Olympics, just for everyone's sake, it might, like, her position, I just think might be not be tenable anymore. And, like, for her sake, just take a step back, reset. Because I think it's, again, it's the stage, the fact that it's the Olympics, everything it stands for. I think the fact that it isn't just Canada Soccer being involved in this, because I think it's a different discussion. If it's just Canada Soccer, just their implication, do they want to continue with Bev Priestman? I think the unfortunate reality is this incident has affected far beyond Canada Soccer. Like, this affects the Canadian Olympic Committee. This affects Canadian athletes. This affects, you know, Canada as a whole. And I think there's enough. It's a big enough incident where, and it rubs wrongly on the, it's like a, you know, it's pretty close to a black eye, if not a black eye, on sport in Canada, where I think it just, for all parties, it might make sense to be like, all right, you know what, just let's fresh start. You know, Bev Priestman can own up to it. And I don't think this is the kind of thing that would cost her a job in the future. So I don't, you know, ultimately it's, again, if they're gonna stop giving coaches jobs for things like this, people like Marcelo Bielsa and some other top managers would not be able to coach today. So I think that's probably the big thing that stands out. Because, like, okay, if this was at a Gold Cup, it would just kind of like, you know what, CONCACAF, again, not, as I've said, I think I find that so, like, ridiculous that it's just, that's a thing where it's like you accept it, oh, it's CONCACAF, but ultimately that's the reality that Canada exists in, is that in CONCACAF, it's a different landscape. But now that you're on an Olympic stage, now that you've got bigger entity, like, there's even, like, financial and governmental implications. Like, this could hurt Canada's ability to, for funding, right? Government funding could come into play here. I think it's just, because of all of that, I think that this could lead to big changes in the coaching staff.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate here, like, how many coaches do you think are out here doing stuff like this, like, percentage wise? And if not exactly drones, then, like, some level of trying to gain advantage. Well, surely we're not the only ones.
Are you saying we're just the ones that got caught? Is that what you're saying, Armin?
I mean, look, I'm wearing an AirPod, and another famous head coach used to wear an AirPod, and he'd cover it in, like, a flesh-covered bandage or whatever, just to kind of make it blend in. And, you know, like, I don't know. How many coaches genuinely do this? Like, is this just a normal thing of soccer? Are we just bad at it? Like, that's the other thing. Like, did we just do something so brazen that, like, other, you know, when other nations are getting their information in another way? Who knows?
I've had some people reach out to me and say something along those lines as well, Armin, that, you know, It's not like we're the only ones to do it, but we got caught. But there's context. There's not every like the Olympics is massive in a lot of countries, especially in Canada. For the women, even versus the men, the men's is a U23 tournament. This is a best on best. Our best women are here, and what the Olympics represents, it's just not the time to do it. Whether I don't know, I'm not in those like all these different teams around the world, obviously, to know how many actually do it or not. But there wasn't a need to do this. Sure. You got caught. It's embarrassing. It is a bit of a black eye, and especially just given again that it's the Olympics and that we're the defending gold medal champions against a team that we should be expected to win. All of it was ridiculous, and I mean, this is just a simple comment just to sum up how I felt. It's the drone incident was crazy. I was shocked when I first heard it. I use flabbergasted, but yes, I get your point. I mean, I've had people reach out to me and say the same thing, being like, "Don't judge too much, Josh."
No, I'm not trying to downplay it. Obviously, it's not a good look, especially because we expect a certain level of honor from Canada. I don't know. It's just a tricky situation, an interesting situation, and also I think a dumb situation because we didn't need to do this to beat New Zealand.
No,
and the other part of this is that, okay, if you do go on and you win a gold, like you defend your gold medal, that entire run will be tarnished by this reputation. So it's also it's such a pointless risk to take for like no benefit. Like Alex, as you said earlier, like you still have to go out and win these games. Like football is such a fluid game. Like, okay, great. Like what could you, so Oliver Platt says apparently there was like 5 minutes of collective footage. Like what are you going to glean from 5 minutes of training footage? Like, oh, don't let this player score on us. Like that was the goal anyways. Like, oh, we have to neutralize certain threats in certain positions. Like, yeah, you'd have to do that anyways. You'd see it on the field. You'd see it in the lineup. And like, I don't know, are we gaining such an advantage from knowing like these surface level tactics?
No, we're not. But, I mean, we keep going in circles because like we didn't gain anything
because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, we didn't gain anything from it, but it was so stupid to do, and it was wrong to do, and there was no reason for it. And now, instead of focusing on the game, this team's under the watch of the media, and all these stories are coming out. I mean, Bev wasn't even at the game today. It was pointless. It was needless, and it is an ugly look. And like I think that this is a fair comment. No, we can't downplay this. This is a black eye in the program.
What were you guys thinking when I don't know if you guys saw it the night before they announced what happened, like they formally announced it, the Canada team report had been taken off of like the Olympics website. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I was sitting there going like, are we getting disqualified for this? Like I don't know. What is the level of severity here? Yeah, so apparently like there was like team guides you can download or something, and Canada was on that page and then was removed off that page. So
I don't know. I never really felt Canada was at risk of it again, because I think it's the level of the, again, while it is cheating, there's levels to cheating, right? I think it's like, again, this isn't a doping scandal. This isn't something where, Canada is trying to intentionally hurt players before the game, right? So I guess that could be another one, or poisoning players so they can't play ultimately. This was them.
Which teams do? No, that's actually crazy. Like
that's, again, if you talk about incidents of like how many times have you heard of a team travels to an away game, half their lineup ends with food poisoning? Coincidence, right? Just a coincidence.
They just stayed at like a 5-star hotel, but that hotel just happened to not know how to cook chicken. Like, great.
So it's like, again, I think it's there's levels of cheating where I think, again, that's why it's tough to levy out a punishment, because I think it's the biggest thing in this is how you can't punish the players too much for this, because ultimately, of course, they benefit from this. Of course, if this has been something that Canada's doing, they'd be complicit in this to an extent. Not saying like that. Of course, if they're players and they're like, oh, don't do this, they could lose their spot. So they're obviously complicit within an extent. But also, like, for them, they probably don't care, right? For them, they just want to go out and play and win. And like, for them, like, yeah, the tactical instruction helps. They're not sitting there needing like, wow, like this 23-page drone report on New Zealand's training is really going to affect my performance. For the most part, players are just people that just want to lock in, go do their job, have some information on who they're up against, little things, and go for it. I think you can't punish the players too much for this. And I think it would be really unfair for them to lose points, right, or to get disqualified. Because for them, like, this is an Olympic dream. It's someone like Chloe Lacasse, 31, battling for so long to get in her first Olympic squad. Today she scores her first Olympic goal. It's an incredible story, and I think it would be super unfair to have that taken away from her because of the staff around her spying. Again, it's something where if it's they're deliberately hurting New Zealand players, if they're deliberately cheating in another way, I think the conversation changes. But I think here ultimately the accountability has to go to the staff and to an extent the federation, because they employ that staff, and that's why I think the punishments would have to be sanctions against the staff or financial, because I just think anything involving 3 points or the players involved would be unfair.
Yeah, that's why I feel the most bad for the players. That's just it sucks. It distracted them. This is a big stage. They know exactly what it's like to be on the stage, and now their minds kind of split. It's like, what the heck's going on? Our coach is in here to back us up. The one that we went and won the gold medal with. Other members of the staff are being sent home. Will we be sent home? Like, you got to give the players a lot of credit, because they don't know. Like, just like we don't know what could have happened. And it's got to be on their mind how devastating it would be, like you mentioned, Alex, if all of a sudden, like, that's how Lacasse was feeling before the game. And like, will I even be able to play? Like, obviously, maybe that would not have happened, but I give the players huge credit for them just to battle in, keep their mentality, and find a way, especially when they didn't get off to a good start, just kind of work the way back in the game and grab the 3 points, because we needed these 3 points, especially going into a match like France, which will be. And even like Colombia is a solid squad too, but I mean, that France game is going to be insane. We did get a question here asking saying that the media from other countries don't seem to be making a big deal of it. I can't say I've been keeping an eye on the media across the world, so I don't know how it's being perceived in other countries. But the question is, do you think we'll be getting booed? Do you think when we play France that Canada will get booed? I mean, if we didn't get booed against New Zealand, although there wasn't a lot of people in the crowd to boo, I don't know. I haven't really seen a lot from other media as well, just kind of a quick story here and there, and they're kind of moving on. So I don't assume we're going to be booed, and I don't think there's going to be any big repercussion like losing the 3 points or being disqualified or anything like that. Maybe a fine down the road. That's kind of where I'm thinking. And then maybe if Bev stays, she stays for the tournament, and then they decide after that. Or maybe Bev decides she doesn't come back. But I assume that she'll probably finish up this tournament, and that may be her last.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. The other thing is now, like, the tournament is long, and the deeper you go into it, the more the narrative will shift towards your performances naturally. And yeah, of course, like, starting this tournament off in that foot is not the best, but it's still not easy to win a gold medal. And that's what the players are going to be focused on right now is don't worry about the distractions. Like, it's not the players' fault, so they can't really stew on it either. Let's just focus on like defending our gold and trying to get through some really tough games. So, I mean, as far as that France game goes, someone here is asking, what do we want the result to be in France versus Colombia game? I think it probably will do us best to get like, what, a 0-0? Probably
a draw.
Yeah, probably a draw. Yeah. Maybe a France win, put a little bit more pressure on Colombia, I guess, in our match against them. I don't know.
I'd say draw.
Probably a draw.
Because I guess the Colombia win could help Canada, but that's only if Canada beats Colombia.
Yeah.
If Colombia loses to Canada, that's where you get a bit of.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. It's like I said, it's not easy to win a gold medal. So the more games we play, I think the more the focus and the story will shift. And as far as what other countries are saying about us, like, everyone's going to have a headline of like, oh, Canada cheated, but then the news cycle moves so quickly. Like, it's not, like Gord Wilkes here says, this is not a global issue. Yeah.
No.
I mean, hey, remember when Argentina, cheated by coming out 6 minutes late to the half against Canada? I mean, hey, again, in this sport, people will do anything to gain an advantage, and it's very important to, put in measures in place to stem any sorts of cheating. And unfortunately, the reality is some get punished more swiftly than others. And again, there's a lot in this sport that will need to be cleaned up.
A lot of dark arts to this sport, Alex. A lot of dark arts that.
What's your favorite of the dark arts? Because I'm genuinely a fan of the goalkeeper fake injury. Like, oh yeah, I'm definitely hurt at the 60th minute, but also like, let's regroup and refocus our tactics.
Mine's similar. I like when there's a ball that comes in and he just like a keeper catches it, waits, and then flops and then sits there for about 45 seconds. And somehow he's like, I hurt myself on the dive.
Yeah.
And then that quick second that should have been, the ball should have been moved and played on. All of a sudden it turns into a 2-minute. I'm hurt. I have the ball, so you got to stop for me. That's my favorite. That's what we like.
I saw one that was just absolutely brilliant. One of the players, I can't remember what team. I think it was CONCACAF Champions Cup. A player went down with a cramp, and like the other team's player was kind of helping him deal with the cramp. And then he puts his leg down and then immediately sticks his other leg up like, oh, this one's cramping now. It's just like seconds ticking off the clock. Like that was another one.
Yeah. Well, we did play against Rodrigo de Paul. So
yes,
everyone knows what that looks like.
Surrounding the ref. Yeah.
That one's rough. Yeah, I don't like that. I hate that one. The surrounding the ref. Favorite one is, I don't know. I like kind of the little tricks of like guys just being like, oh, let me take it's like the goalkeeper. It's like, oh, the shot missed the left of my goal. Let me take the ball and take it all the way to the furthest goal kick point to the right side of my goal just to take a goal kick. And oh, my shin pads are bothering me all of a sudden in the 91st minute. Like, yeah, let me just readjust that. Oh, and my shoelace is untied. But it's like the other one I saw the other day was really hilarious. Someone got a throw in at about the halfway point, and they somehow snuck their way to about halfway into the half with the throw and just like keep faking. And then they threw it in. I was just like, how do you get away with this stuff? But I'm like, hey, if you try it, if you don't try, you're never going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's football, right? Like within the parameters of the rules of the game, there's a lot of, interesting interpretations of certain things. And I mean, some teams are better at it than others, right? So I think one of my favorite things is, I can't remember which game during the Copa America it was, but it was like the way Richie Larea, I think subbed into the match and then immediately got under the player's skin. Just like a good shit talker is such a valuable asset to have on your team. Genuinely. Like a guy who, I can't remember who it was. Again, my memory is failing me in my old age of 31. But it was a Toronto FC player in the early years, and he was so just like good at shit talking. Like he would say things that you'd like have to stew on, and like just it would hit you like a minute later, and you'd be like, "Oh my goodness, why would you say that?"
Was it Jimmy Brennan?
I feel like no. Jimmy Brennan will always just tell you what he thinks. No, he'll just tell you what he thinks. That's what you gotta love about him. I don't know, man, but flying drones is definitely not up there. That's for sure.
No, we got about 7 or 8 minutes left of the stream, guys. So I think, as I promised earlier, we will build a little starting 11 for the France match to end off on a high note. Let me just get it so it fits in properly. But all right, I don't know. You guys can feel free to jump in, guys, in the chat. Anyone? We're gonna try to come up with a starting 11 for the France match of what we want to see and what we learned from the game we just saw here. So I'll just ask you.
Save yourself some time, I guess. Just put in like Sheridan and Jay Rose and Buchanan and Gilles and Fleming, because I think you can save some time with them.
I'm gonna go fill out those positions now. I'm gonna fill out the keeper, the back three, Lawrence, Fleming, and then I'm gonna just kind of leave the top three in the left back. So Alex and our midfield, free to jump in. Just start talking about what you kind of maybe want to see as I build out the rest of the team, because those are basically the question marks. Who's gonna play at left wing back, and how is the front three going to shape up? Alex, what do you want? Start with the left wing back. What do you think?
Honestly, though, I think it's interesting because I think if the argument's Gabrielle Carl versus Janine Becky, I think it's interesting that Becky started on the bench versus Australia in that friendly we watched. It looks like she started against Nigeria, though, in the one we didn't see. But then Olympic opener, she's on the bench. So I wonder if, that's a sign that we could see Carl at left wing back in this game, and that if Becky is likely relegated to a super sub and they just kind of run it back really, and kind of just hope that they get a bit more fluidity, they build some confidence, and that the fact that because again,
if Carl's gonna get it,
I think again, based on what we saw, if we're judging the game based on what we saw, the only changes I would see would be a Becky for a Leon. But the question is Bev Priestman going to do that? I just don't see it happening.
All right. So
the other side of this is that I feel like Becky's better on the right. So if you have to move Lawrence, you don't want to move Lawrence and play like Becky Lawrence wingbacks. But yeah, I think Gabby Carl probably is like my pick. And then really the only kind of contention here is at the number 9 and at the one you have as number 7.
That's supposed to be Quinn. That's supposed to be Quinn.
Yeah, I'd say Quinn sticks in. Although, yeah, again, Simi Awujo could potentially swap in. I mean, that France midfield's pretty strong too. Grace Gaoro, and Zadali, like they've got some good players in there, and might go with Quinn for a bit of experience in that kind of battle.
We got a couple questions here. Do you start Leon and then Becky and Vienne Heidema start? I feel like I don't know. I feel like that's too much change.
I wonder if Lacasse might come off. I know she scored, but it was interesting. She came off in the 57th minute.
So I want to make one change just to make this kind of interesting. Otherwise, I was
gonna say
I built the same team.
Didn't we experiment with Lacasse as like a left wing back for a little bit there?
We did. And Becky and Lacasse can both play at left wing back. But Carl had a
Leon can go on the left. Maybe that's something Bev Priestman tries because she didn't look too comfortable on the right. Maybe it's something where Becky gets to go on the right, Leon goes on the left, and Prince keeps starting up front. She kind of seems to be the preferred option. And
there you go. So made it a little different. Leon moves over to the left. That was a big worry. She didn't have a great match. Has the ability maybe to cut in on her right as well. Becky comes in probably her natural position. We keep the midfield duo and we keep Gabby Carl. So basically just one change, and Lacasse can probably be one of the first to come off the bench, maybe with Vienne as well.
Probably those are your just constant subs you keep going to, because if they're going to keep doing you a job, potentially look at starting.
If the assistant coach of France is watching the stream right now and taking notes, that counts as cheating. I'm just putting that out there.
No drills.
This is technically an overhead view right here. I don't know. There's shirts, there's a grass, there's a field. So.
All right. Well, yeah, there you go. So not much that starting 11. Before I built it, I realized I don't know. I thought there could have been a little bit, and there still could be. Like the left wing back role. It could be Lacasse, it could be Becky. We don't really know. We did tweak. A little bit.
You could also tweak the entire lineup. Like if you want to go a little bit more midfield heavy, which might be a play here, you could start Quinn, Awujo, and Fleming, and then maybe drop to a back 4. But it's like I know it's a pretty big departure, but I mean there are options. Like the good thing about Bev Priestman's team is that like when you have an 18-player roster, you have so little like wiggle room. But at the very least, like you have players that can play multiple positions, and there's that versatility there. So I don't know.
Yeah, what's interesting is that what I find with Bev Priestman is that she usually has a core group that starts, and she kind of tinkers around the edges, and that's why I think it's tough to make changes, because all the players that she would typically tinker around and pull out did well enough or fit a specific enough role that it's hard to see too many taking out. And the question is more like with the Leon, who's one of those players who typically doesn't come out, or a Lawrence, who's one of those players who typically don't come out. Those two kind of struggle in this game, and I just don't see Bev Priestman dropping them after one quiet game. That's, I think, the question is if they have a quiet game against France, then things get really interesting for Colombia, and I think we could see a bigger shakeup.
That is fair.
So what are you guys thinking? What are you guys thinking for that France result? Think we can do it?
It's tough. I want to see France in a bit, because France, again, they've historically really underperformed at these sorts of tournaments. But Renard, I think, has come in and changed their mentality. And I think a strong opening win over Colombia would kind of set the tone in that regard. So I'd say gut feeling, I kind of see like a 2-1 France, but I don't. This kind of just has draw written all over it. I feel like this France-Canada game, like a 1-1 0-0 draw is probably what I would predict.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
They're also the home team, so it's like, they have that sort of an advantage. I don't know. It'll be a tough result. I think that's probably the toughest one of the group. Potentially one of the toughest games of the tournament if, the bracket is favorable to us.
Oh, for sure. It's gonna be a great watch though, and it's gonna really show what this team is made of if they want to push on and have any chance of going on to do the back-to-back gold medals. But that's gonna do it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. Armin, thanks for popping on. The drone conversation was a fun one. But hey,
I also just want to I also just want to give a quick shout out to there's this while we're talking about France, there's on the men's side there's this new up and coming. I think they're all U23 players. There's this guy Alexander Lacazette. He's been scoring goals. So yeah, I just want to give him a shout out. Maybe a player to keep an eye on here at the men's side of the bracket.
33 and still getting better day after day. Yeah. But all right, Canada picked up 3 points. We have a big match coming up on Sunday. A lot of content still to come here on One Soccer. If you guys enjoyed the stream, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub. We'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.